Week 2 recap on FFT Express. And welcome, everyone. Hope Sunday was great for you. Let's talk about where's my sad trombone? The injuries, Jamie. We'll start with Cooper Kupp. Yeah, it's kind of a disappointing one. Ankle injury for Cooper Kupp. Puka Nacua is also hurt. Give me the skinny on the Rams.
We know Puka's out for at least a month, if not longer, based on the reports that we got Saturday night and Sunday. So that's very frustrating. And then for Cooper Kupp to leave the game with an injury to his ankle, apparently in a walking boot, not exactly the most encouraging thing. So you're looking at Demarcus Robinson, you're looking at Tyler Johnson, Jordan Whittington. One of those guys will hopefully step up and give us some consistent performances moving forward. But it's terrible for Matthew Stafford, for anybody that was relying on him. So can't trust him in one quarterback leagues, and clearly a little questionable based on today in Superflex and 2 quarterback leagues. And we'll be scrambling for the waiver wire to replace some of these guys. So just sucks because it looked like Cooper Kupp, in the absence of Nacua, was going to be an absolute monster, and we may not have that if he's going to miss any time.
And we also have Justin Jefferson. We have Amon-Ra St. Brown dealing with injuries. Those don't look as bad, right?
For St. Brown, at least they said it. Dan Campbell said nothing long-term that they're looking at. But you have all the Twitter doctors who are, in a lot of cases, accurate, the professional ones, I mean, saying that it could be high ankle sprain, it could be something else in his knee. If they're ruling out ACL, that's clearly the best part. But this is something that we probably expect to be without St. Brown for at least week 3 and maybe longer than that. And Jefferson seems like it's going to be okay. Contusion. Sounds like he said he's going to play, so hopefully that's the case. Who was the other one?
That's it.
Those two receivers. Yeah.
Pacheco is one we're going to be keeping an eye on as well, and Carson Steel could be someone that we're picking up. Which running back would you pick up for the Chiefs if Pacheco were to be time?
I would put in claims for both. I think Steel first, based on how the Chiefs are operating right now. That Steel is going to get the running downs opportunities, but this is a team that we've seen in the past. If this is going to be a long-term injury for Pacheco, will they go out and get somebody that's a little bit more of a veteran presence from a running standpoint, or will they give a little bit more to Pirine? So I think both guys are going to be in play.
All right, let's talk about winners and losers. Let's start with your start of the week, J.K. Dobbins. And he had another big game, over 130 rushing yards, scored a touchdown, had a long touchdown run. How concerned are you, though, that he's really splitting very evenly with Gus Edwards?
As I said on our Sunday recap, I think there's a positive and a negative to it. The positive is that they're not overworking him. And for a guy with an injury track record like his, 43 missed games prior to this year, you don't want to see him run into a potential situation where he can get hurt. Clearly, he can get hurt on any play. So, whether it's 1 carry a game or 15 to 20 carries a game. But they haven't needed him to have that heavy workload yet. So the negative is that Gus Edwards is getting a lot of work. The positive is that Dobbins has been so fantastic in limited work. So as long as he's producing like this, I'm still going to start him. If he was getting 15-plus carries consistently, we'd be talking about a top 10 guy, no matter who the matchup is. Based on the amount of work that he's getting, he'll probably settle as a very safe number 2 running back until he proves otherwise.
I'm going to give you the top 5 at each position. We'll talk about these players here. Kyler Murray, Derek Carr, Sam Darnold, Daniel Jones, Joe Burrow, and Baker Mayfield. Those are Baker and Joe Burrow are basically tied for 5th. Murray ahead of the field, big time. Carr, Darnold, Daniel Jones, Joe Burrow, Baker Mayfield.
I think for Mayfield, you kind of know what you're getting at this point. At least you should. So back end number 1 quarterback. Good to see Burrow bounce back. Only get better when T. Higgins is there. So should be considered still a number 1 quarterback. Kyler locked in. It's the other 2 guys that you look at and say, okay, what are we dealing with here? So Daniel Jones, you throw out. It was Washington, kept his job, I think, for at least 1 more week. Darnold, we might have something here. As long as Jefferson's healthy. Must start guy, no, but I know there's a Tua manager in every league looking for a quarterback. A week after, a Jordan Love manager in every league is looking for a quarterback, and Derek Carr looks like he may be really beneficial in this new offense for the Saints. So Clint Kubiak has maybe found something with Derek Carr.
Kamara is your number 1 running back this week, 43 fantasy points. Devon Achane 2, James Cook 3. So that was some Thursday night magic. Breece Hall and J.K. Dobbins. I guess Kamara is really the story here. I guess if you were drafting today, what round would you take Alvin Kamara in?
He'd be in that round 2 range, if not round 1, when you look at how he's done it. And the hope was, okay, Clint Kubiak comes in. Is he going to do some things like Christian McCaffrey? Well, Seems like he's doing some things like Christian McCaffrey. The knock on him is still the thing you have to be worried about. Age and any concern about breaking down. Now they're not running him into the ground. They've had 2 blowout victories, so I'm sure that's helped. But now Taysom Hill's got a little bit of an injury. We'll see how much that is a factor moving forward. Kendra Miller, we know, who was somebody that I think in the beginning of the process before training camp, and Dennis Allen showed us how much he hates Kendra Miller, but is not a factor at all. So lack of competition is certainly looking like it's a great situation for him. I would still put him in the sell high category just because this is probably his best game, fantasy wise. Hard to expect him to do anything better than this moving forward. So if you can turn him into one of the top 6 or 7 running backs, that's not a bad move to make.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously, I like Kamara. I have decent amount of share. I don't know, maybe 3 teams with Kamara, not as much as I'd like, but I think I'm going to offer him for Garrett Wilson. If I feel like I'm good at running back and need a receiver, I feel like we said on the show we're going to buy low on Garrett Wilson.
You might be able to get Wilson and something else.
Yeah, I might be able to. All right, we're going to take a break here. We'll look at the top wide receivers and tight ends and also some losers from week 2 after this. So going back to the leaderboard here, the top wide receivers in fantasy week 3. This is all going into fantasy week 2, all going into Sunday night. Your top wide receivers are Marvin Harrison Jr., DK Metcalf, Malik Neighbors, Devontae Adams, Chris Godwin, and Calvin Ridley is tied with Chris Godwin. So it's Harrison, Metcalf, Neighbors, Adams, Godwin, Ridley.
What do they all have in common aside from Chris Godwin?
I don't know.
They all stunk in week 1.
Yeah.
So what does that tell you? What did we say on the recap last week? Don't panic, right?
Of course.
And so don't overreact too much to these performances in week 2 for some of these guys. I mean, Devontae Adams is going to be somewhere in between what he was last week. Harrison and Neighbors, somewhere in between where they were last week. I think in the case of DK Metcalf, for a guy that we thought could really take off in this offense, this was highly encouraging. Against, I think it's going to be a pretty decent secondary for the most part, but maybe I shouldn't say decent secondary, but played well in week 1 against the Bengals. So I think there was a little concern would the Seahawks have this much success? But all of these guys were drafted to be must-start receivers, and they all performed that way. So Neighbors not going to get 18 targets weekly. Harrison's not going to get 2 touchdowns weekly, but you see what these guys are capable of, and that's why we were drafting where they were drafting.
Harrison has 1 catch in 7 of 8 quarters. And then in the first quarter of this game, he just I don't know if that concerns you at all, because he's basically been invisible other than 1 quarter.
If this game was competitive, he's probably getting another 4 or 5 targets.
Yeah. All right. And then we'll go to the tight ends here. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. Who's the number 1 tight end? Probably
Bowers.
Kittle. Yeah. 7 for 76 and a touchdown. Bowers, Hunter Henry, Mike Gesicki, and Trey McBride. Trey McBride's going to bump up ahead of Gesicki once they count the fumble recovery touchdown. But without that, it's Kittle, Bowers, Henry, Gesicki, and McBride.
So we have 2 waiver wire options that could be really exciting to an extent. You have Gesicki, who could have had a touchdown in week 1, called back due to a penalty, and no T. Higgins. And so steps up in this game as the second option for the Bengals. I guess you could say second or third option, depending how you view, Yoshivas with the 2 touchdowns. And then you have the strong performance from Hunter Henry. And as Dave Richards said on our recap show, that's the second week in a row that a tight end has been the leading receiving option for the Patriots. Austin Hooper last week on a much lower scale. And Henry comes out and does this. Well, we know Alex Van Pelt comes from the Kevin Stefanski coaching tree, and they like to lean on their tight ends quite heavily. So with, Jalen Polk scored, Javon Baker was up, active for the first time. This is going to be a receiving core that's clearly a work in progress. Hunter Henry looks like, I don't want to say must add across the board, but if you lost Ingram, you're down Ferguson, you're down Njoku, these are 2 guys that are going to be popular off waivers.
Okay. And then who are some losers? I know we spent a lot of time on the winners, but who are some losers from this week?
I mean, Anthony Richardson, Mahomes, those are 2 high-end quarterbacks that you have to put in the loser category. Running backs, Rashad White, Jerome Ford. I'm trying to think of the other high-end guys. The Cowboys running backs.
Pittman and Cooper and
the receiver. Yeah, get the receivers. Yeah, it's Pittman, it's Cooper, it's Deontay Johnson, Christian Kirk. These guys all had down performances. We kind of laid out a little bit. You can listen to the full-length episode of some, trade opportunities that could be there for some of these guys.
And what about Kelsey?
Kelsey's frustrating. It's very frustrating, but I do think that if Pacheco misses time, that should open up things for the receivers, all of them. Rice could get a little bit better. Worthy, I think, will get some, different touches. They'll try to manufacture touches for him, I think, as an option in the backfield. And then Kelsey, we saw the screen that he felt if he gets that touchdown, I think everybody's a little bit more at ease with him. He falls a yard short.
Yeah,
on the tight end screen.
Yeah. Okay, that's Jamie Eisberg. I'm Adam Azer. Thanks for listening to FFT Express. We'll talk to you tomorrow, everybody.